Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. Hitting you guys with a thoughtful video on the Fantano channel about the Juggalos. They marched on Washington this past weekend. ICP was there, other musicians were there, all the fans, the family were there, and as reported by NME, they got some pictures up here of the march, and I get that on the surface, it may look kind of ridiculous what they're doing here. Babies with clown makeup, FBI listens to Nickelback, Clown Lives Matter posters, and Grab America by the Posse. That's one of my favorites. And this is one of many articles and sets of photos that have come out of the march since they did it. It doesn't look like the biggest march, but looks like they certainly got it done. All the respect to them in the world. I've seen a lot of people reacting to this saying, aren't there more important things going on right now? Isn't this stupid? Isn't this dumb? They aren't taking this very seriously. I get that on the surface, ICP may look like, and their fans may look like they're joking. They are just having a fun time. And certainly in one respect they are. But at its core, I think their action here is worth noting. I think it is important. I don't think it's worth writing off. I think as somebody who doesn't typically interact in this wing of the artistic community, but still is concerned about the artistic community as a whole, should care about what's going on here, because the FBI's categorization of them as a gang, almost like a menace to society, which is what they were protesting here, is pretty unfair, honestly. Like, out of all of the pictures and hours of footage that have been gathered of Juggalos over the years, they have not been shown to show hateful or violent tendencies. It's not like they sort of organize to perform hate crimes on non-Juggalos or any group of people that I know of. There are quite a few songs in ICP's discography that seem pretty aggressive toward rednecks, but I haven't ever read about sort of a slew of crimes created by Juggalos against rednecks or anything like that. So anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that we should care about this, because if it can happen to them, it could really happen to anybody. Because honestly, what are Juggalos doing? Because again, all that footage, all those pictures gathered of them, and there has been a lot because over the years, Juggalos have sort of been a spectacle that people have been curious about, because it's a really weird and odd subset of underground culture. It's a bit of a spectacle for most people who are outside of the world, even for me. And if people can get labeled as a gang merely for, the Hatchet Man, merely for wearing clown makeup, merely for listening to ICP, then, what can't you get labeled as a gang for? What can't you get labeled as a terrorist group for? What can't you do that will end up getting this sort of label thrown on you? And which brings me to my first point. Counterculture is often the canary in the coal mine when it comes to free speech, not just because of the fact that, you have a lot of alternative expressions and alternative thought usually going on in these communities because they're not regulated or controlled by a lot of the more mainstream powers that be, but often because these groups are usually small, they're usually powerless, they usually don't have any sort of sway or influence in popular culture or government or anything like that. So it's kind of easy to sort of shit on them, push them over to the side, marginalize them for whatever reason, because really there's not really going to be any uproar, sort of in mainstream culture over this, because nobody really cares about them. They're not really sort of at the front of the minds of the average person, or really most people who are sort of outside of that culture. And because it's so easy to kind of write them off and push them to the side, that's kind of all the more reason to be concerned. And I get it. I understand, that there, for some people, are more important things going on than caring about Juggalos. And I'm not saying that Juggalos should be priority one on anybody's list. But if you can, allow the government to totally just toss to the side one group of people, or falsely categorize one group of people, then really, how can I sort of see you as a person who stands on principle when you'll fly the flag for one group of people, but not the other group of people. I mean, while on the surface it may not seem like Juggalos are all that serious, for them to be categorized in the way that they have been by the FBI, it's not really a joke. And honestly, what I need to sort of get you guys to understand is that a Juggalo's free speech is kind of your free speech. Well, not even kind of. It's actually your free speech as well. When one person's free speech is being stepped on, or one person's ability to express themselves without being, tossed into the category of a gang or tossed in the category of a terrorist group or something like that, that also, sort of impacts your ability to do that too. Even if, on the surface it may not seem like so, because I don't talk like or act like or dress like a Juggalo. Why should I be worried? That's kind of all the more reason to be worried, because that group of people, all they're doing is just dressing weird. All they're doing is just wearing some clown makeup. All they're just listening to is a certain type of music. Like, if that can happen to them, it could happen to anybody. I know I'm reiterating points, but this stuff really kind of needs to get brought home. So, sure, they're certainly guilty of a lack of good taste, but that's kind of not enough to sort of earn them the categorization that they've received. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, oppression is not really a contest. Mistreatment by the government is not really a contest. I know we live in a slightly different world in 2017 than we did in 2016 prior to the election, but what ICP has sort of marched against here has been an ongoing thing. This has been a long-running thing. I don't think ICP should just sort of stand to the side and cancel everything just because, the world of Donald J. Trump, the Trump era, is a little bit weirder. It's a little bit more volatile. It's a little bit more serious than it might have felt when they originally decided to do this march. I saw a lot of people sort of talking about, this Trump-centric march or rally happening at the same time as this one, as if they were going to clash or had something to do with each other. And honestly, that didn't really seem to be the case. That sort of seemed to be, a bit of a wet dream of a lot of music writers. I mean, I myself thought it was sort of a funny sort of prospect, but ICP, I think, have some legitimate grievances here. I think the fact that they have been sort of labeled the way that they have is sort of unfair, and it's kind of nasty. And, let's not act like this sort of stuff hasn't happened in the past and isn't also serious in the case of other sections of music culture being falsely sort of miscategorized or negatively miscategorized by, law enforcement agencies, been treated really aggressively by law enforcement. What else am I trying to think of? Well, actually just kind of being outright banned from performing in a certain place or performing a certain kind of music. This has happened before with hippies and punks, gangster rap and the hip hop community in general, black metal, death metal, and when it happens to Juggalos, I think we should kind of take it seriously too, not just because, and not just sort of toss them to the side because we don't really like their music and we think they smoke too much cigarettes and we think their tattoos don't look all that good and we think they're kind of silly. There's still a musical subculture that's worthy of respect and the right to gather and the right to express themselves and the right to sort of put out the art and put out the messages that they want to put out into the world, as long as they're not hurting anybody else, they're allowed the right to do that without sort of, being mistreated by law enforcement, being miscategorized by the FBI, just as any artistic subculture is. So, I think ICP deserve all the respect in the world for coming out there, saying their piece, even if they didn't say it eloquently, standing for their rights, even if they didn't stand for them, in a really dramatic way that would look perfect in a film or something like that. They're doing more than, I think some people are, in the artistic community when it comes to defending an artist's ability to express what they want to express and get out there what they want to get out there. Honestly, with a lot of the music and artistic community right now, it seems like most people need to worry about walking on eggshells, when it comes to saying certain things, expressing certain ideas, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, ICP is out here being like, hey, look, we don't need to be sort of cast aside as a dangerous gang just because we do what we want to do. We don't hurt anybody. We're just doing what we want to do for fun. We're just expressing ourselves. We're just kind of living this lifestyle that we want to live. And, I think that message and that sentiment is kind of lacking from a lot of wings of the, music scene right now. ICP is up here standing for it, and I think they should be respected for that. Again, even if on the surface it does all seem a little silly. All right, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think of this Juggalo March on Washington. You're the best. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Over here next to my head is another video that you should check out, or you can click on the link to subscribe to the channel. Forever.